Good afternoon and welcome to the Wavy Digital Desk. I'm your host, Sarah Good. Today we're going to be talking about the emergency blood shortage the American Red Cross declared earlier this week. We're going to talk about the local impact with Riverside Health System's Dr. Munn about what this means for hospital centers around here, as well as what this means across the country, especially as we're heading into, busy hurricane season and issues that we could face, going into August. So I'm going to bring on Dr. Munn now. Dr. Munn, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
You.
Can you just start by talking about, I know it's general, but how important blood donation is?
Well, it has always been absolutely critical, but as technology has improved and all of the medical advances that we've had, there's just nothing as helpful in terms of taking care of injured patients or lots of other medical problems as having blood available and blood products available.
And we spoke about 6 months ago when the American Red Cross was also facing an emergency blood shortage, and they were also saying they had the lowest amount of donors in about 20 years. Now here we are, and they're saying that about 25% of their inventory dropped last month in July. I know summer shortages occur, but what does it really mean to be having an emergency blood shortage now?
Well, you're right. It's always a little bit of a shortage in the summertime, both because of a drop off in donations and also we use more blood because more people get injured in the summertime. But yes, in a critical situation like this, where they are actually looking at a decrease in the amount of blood they have on hand and a drop off in donations, that's when the Red Cross really has to pull the trigger and make it an emergency concern. And in order to do that, they're basically limiting their ability to supply various hospitals and other centers that need the blood products. And so our normal orders would be shorter, smaller orders than we would normally expect and what we normally use.
And how does this work? Is it supplementing what you all have at Riverside?
Yes, so there are basically the Red Cross provides what they can, and we use other vendors if we can find other blood products. But everybody has the same shortage concerns really across all of the different opportunities to access blood products. And then they limit what they give us on our normal ordering basis and what we keep on the shelf. And then we get approval for emergency release if we need beyond that level.
And talk about having supply at the ready, as head and director of, trauma services, how important is it to have blood available for any trauma that's coming in?
Well, in particular, this shortage is affecting the type O blood, and that's the one that we use for emergencies. So that's when, those are the universal donors that we can use on any patient that comes in. And when that happens, when we have an emergency or a trauma or anything that's urgent like that, we don't have time to test the individual patient receiving the blood, then we need the type O blood to give to those patients. And that's where it becomes critically important for what I do in trauma.
And they said that, over the country, really 100 plus, donations and, 100 plus drives, have been canceled maybe for heat related, for, her storm related reasons. When all of those, situations are impacting blood donations and drives, I imagine as August comes and there's even more, possible storm damage or storms kind of brewing up, especially in the East Coast region, that could make another impact.
Absolutely. And that's why we need to, while we're not, I know there's a storm heading this way, but
It's luckily it's going a little bit more west, so.
right. While we're not having storms, while we do have the opportunity to make those donation centers full, that's when we need to get everybody, out of their homes and out to give the blood that they can when they can.
And do those drives make a difference, whether it's just a small drive at a company or a drive, just one day in the summer, hosted by a city? Does that really make an impact?
It absolutely does. It all adds up, and we really should have every chair full at every donation site if we, could make it that way. And the other thing is that it's not just folks who have type O blood. We need every kind of blood product that we can get our hands on. They'll all be useful. So even if you aren't the right blood type for this particular shortage, it still helps for us to have blood available, because then if someone does have your specific blood type, then it gives us the opportunity to help those patients as well.
And I imagine if you have more of a rare blood type, that need goes up exponentially for for you to donate.
It does. And it's, the other thing that's critical right now is the same thing as the last time we spoke, which is platelets. And that is also primarily useful for, in what I do for emergencies and injured patients, but it's helpful in a lot of other regards as well. And we've been on a nationwide shortage of platelets for really since before the pandemic. And so that's continued, and we still need those donations as well.
That's hard to hear, especially, obviously now it's been 4 years, but to not have really recouped from what the inventory was must really impact certain hospital centers.
Absolutely. And we continue to use more blood products as the technology has improved, and we find that that's really the best thing for patients. So, we're using more than we did in the past as well.
And for people, I know there are people that are afraid of needles. They're afraid of blood. And, I'm sorry if you're watching, there obviously is blood and needles on screen. But for those people that are afraid of it, I feel, could you explain how routine it is really? At this point, there's a system. It's made to really help everyone be a part of the donation process.
Red Cross is absolutely expert at making this as easy and seamless as possible. They're very familiar with all the different types of folks who have concerns about blood donation. And it's really no more invasive than having your labs drawn, which if you have a primary care doctor and you're over a certain age, you're probably doing that annually anyway. And so it's really the same process. They're going to keep you there long enough to make sure that everything's okay. They're there to comfort you, and it's really very easy to do.
And I know that you don't want to get to this point at Riverside, but I'm sure hospital centers across the country, and as well as the American Red Cross, if they're lowering distributions, do you have to start making calls about who you're using blood products on, or do you just sort of use until the inventory drops, which is sort of why we're in the situation now?
Well, I think there's always that in the back of our minds about being good stewards of the products that we have. But we're certainly not going to limit based on where we are right now. But it is true that if we happen to have a lot of traumas, we can run out very quickly, and then we just have to search across the country to try and find the products that we need. But it's certainly something that we're always keeping in mind, and we are make certain that we don't needlessly use blood products, unless we absolutely have to.
And I do want to ask too, obviously as situations arise like tornadoes and hurricanes, and we've seen a lot of devastation in, the spring and summer months this year. And, hurricane season seems to, I know it started maybe more in the southeast, but, it seems to sort of be in this phase right now where it could pick up, again in August and September. Do you also need an overstock in that situation because you're worried about, what happens as injuries might occur from those storms?
It's both. Yeah, absolutely. We have more injuries and we have more need to give blood products, but also the lack of donation from those areas that are affected. And so, it really does make it difficult for us to access the blood products that we need and get the donation centers open and process the blood, and everything's very similar to what we had during the pandemic.
And they've opened up some of the restraints that they, had before in terms of who can give. Did that seem to alleviate some of the donation problem?
I think it's improved, but we're still in a situation where we're not there yet. We need all the help that we can get.
Absolutely. And heading into this period again, it's been about 8 months since we've had, they're not sending these press releases out every month saying there's emergency blood shortage, right? So, 8 months ago, we spoke about this, and here we are again. How dire does the situation have to be for them to put that release out? They didn't really put it out before, hurricane season started. So to be in the situation now, is that really a big call for help, or is that just them seeing what could potentially happen?
I think that there's some measure of reading the tea leaves, but really they don't set out the release until we're at a situation where they really have to restrict what they're providing. And so if your normal order can't be filled, then, for all of the local hospitals, then they're letting us know to be prepared for that so that we can plan ahead. And that's where it really comes down to a critical shortage.
Right. And I try to make that point just so people understand how significant it is. This is not a normal announcement. In terms of Riverside, are there things that you all do on site, donations, drives that, that bring the direct community right in to help you right on site as opposed to sort of ordering in blood products?
We do have our own drives here on campus at the hospital, and also, if you go on the website for the American Red Cross, you can basically put in your zip code, and they'll tell you multiple locations this week that are within 20 miles of your house or 50 miles of your house and various different distances. And that's what you can do with us as well. I mean, there are several that are basically walking distance from the hospital that are close by and frequent throughout the week. So I think there's one nearby to anyone around this area, and it always helps to have the donations. And we do not basically get blood for our own hospital. We don't do, it all goes to the Red Cross, and then they distribute it appropriately. So it doesn't just come straight to Riverside.
And that's great because that, depending on where your local health center is, even if it happens to be a little bit further out, from trauma centers, obviously all centers need blood, correct? It's not just the trauma centers around here that need access.
Absolutely. And it's not just hospitals, there are infusion centers treating cancer patients and other things like that, where there are people getting blood products that are necessary for their health and well-being. So yeah, absolutely.
And we're doing a story, about family members organizing their own drives. That's an option, if that's something close to you, that is something that you can do through the Red Cross as well.
Absolutely. It's a great community service, and it's a great thing to get your family involved with.
Well, Dr. Munn, is there anything else on the topic of, blood shortage that you all just like for people to know? I mean, I've heard so many stories of people feeling moved after they've experienced an emergency, after they've experienced an accident where they needed it or a family member needed it, right, to then donate blood. But you obviously want to catch people before that if you can, to sort of open up their mind to be able to do this at some point during the year.
I really just think that it's something that everyone should think about all year round. And, it does seem like an inconvenience, but if you actually try it one time, you'll see that it's really very straightforward and very easy to do. There are lots of opportunities throughout the day and into the evening at several locations, probably near your home. And so I would say just get out and do it once and see how easy it is, and then you'll become a donor for life, someone who continuously donates.
Right. They're trying to make it convenient for you to fit in your schedule. And I know that here at Wavy, we do blood drives as well, to fit it in. I think there's some video that played of a mobile, if you will, Red Cross van that does drive around, that does have that accessibility. Well, Dr. Munn, thank you so much for talking with me this afternoon. Is there anything just going forward into this season that you'd like people to be aware of? I mean, the one thing I do want to say, with hurricanes, we always hear that some of the worst injuries actually occur from the cleanup, occur from, people trying to take care of things in their own home. In the trauma services department, is that something that you sort of caution?
Absolutely. Stay away from the chainsaws and things like that, and getting on ladders. Those are all very dangerous activities, and, try to let professionals handle those things and get help. And don't do any of those risky activities, because again, this is a bad time to get injured when you're in the middle of a blood shortage.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Munn, thank you so much again for speaking with me on this. Hopefully we're not going to have to circle back on this again, but I appreciate you stressing the need for blood shortage with us and talking about this Red Cross blood shortage emergency.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely.